All right, family, welcome back. Apologize. There's a limit for instance, like the Instagram stream, stuff like that. So everything times out after a while. And of course, this conversation was getting a little deep, and I had to kind of uh, 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 go a little longer than what I thought. And of course, playing the clips with Dr. Shockley and the documentary. Again, family, please, if you have the opportunity, I'm asking you to. Um, just get the documentary, download. Subscribe, pay for. I believe it's $7.99. Um, let's see here. I believe it's this slide. Nope, it's this slide. Um, Again, family, get the documentary. Order the documentary. It's available right now on Amazon Prime. Cultural War, focus on Black youth, and we were talking about the one clip that we played from Culture War, focus on Black youth, in reference, to the young man from Colombia who was talking about the fact that they're taught, in Latin America, Central America, and South America. They taught, that they're all, this one race. They're all Hispanic. They're all Latinos. And he identified something that was interesting because he talks about the differences in the different cultures, right? He talks about, the British colonizers, they were brutal and they were purposeful in reference to their separation. Like they separated things, and even as this country continued to evolve, it was always separated black and white, and you had, we went through, and I talk about this all the time as we go through each century, coming from the 1600 coming from 1600s when the colonizers started settling, and you start getting the 1700s, 1800s, and now mostly all British rule or descendants of British rule, which I tell you all the time, they were religious extremists. They were all these Jesuit extremists from England, and that believed in the Trinity, and they came in here purposely separating, those that became enslaved originally when they first came here. They had to come with a different attitude. They didn't come here with an enslaved attitude. They came here with what they call indentured servitude, where because you got on board with these colonizers, and you may have been black, there were Portuguese, there were all kinds of people. I've named some of the names of folks, um, like Maximus del Sousa, coming on the Ark and the Dove, some of the first settlers to come over, with Ceaseless Calvert, who is known as the Lord of Baltimore. Um, and There were black folks that came here. They came here as indentured servants, and they came and they were supposed to work the land for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. However, they were supposed to pay for their trip here, and they paid for it by helping to colonize and cultivate, and defend and protect, the interests of these colonizers, and then eventually went on to get 40, 50 acres or more of their own land, and are able to, in some cases, some folks flourished. So they were free, what they call free men, free black men that were in this region. So, but from what Brother Tyrone Boast has, talked about, and you can find it in the history books, yourself, that there was this incident that took place in Virginia of what was supposed to be free black men, and in the process, those free black men had to protect themselves and defend themselves against colonizers, against white British colonizers. And in the end of the day, uh, they killed off a lot of white folks in the process defending themselves. And what ended up happening was is that those in Virginia, after they broke up this rebellion, so-called rebellion, or these people that were defending themselves, black people that were defending themselves in Virginia, they decided to start placing folks of color in what they call indefinite servitude. And that's really where your first enslavement really came from, that definition of indefinite servitude. And it started in Virginia, and people like William, and I'm not sorry, Anthony and Mary Johnson, who were free people who came to Maryland and settled here in Maryland. and are known historically as Marylanders, but originally they started in the Virginia colonies, and they quickly, hightailed it out of Virginia when they started rounding up black people and putting them into indefinite servitude. And so, but it's, again, he talks about it. The last clip that we played, if you watched the previous video, the video earlier, he talks about the fact that that these so-called differences between Central America and South America, and the enslavement that took place there and the colonization there was different because the Portugals, the Spaniards, they mingled, they raped the women, they created these other societies built on that mixture. And again, you can't leave out the indigenous people that were there, whether it was descendants of Aztecs, descendants of the Mayans, descendants of, there's many different indigenous people from Central America on down. And in some cases, you see there are some of these folks that are from those regions that have a more indigenous look to them. They don't look necessarily pure African, like the gentleman that was on. He looks more African, or is more darker, and obviously has a stronger African trait. But these folks have more of an indigenous look to them. So they look like more like the indigenous natives that lived in those regions, and they may have been mingling and mixing with that particular group, and are descendants of the Mayans, descendants of those particular groups in those areas. But again, he's pointing out the fact that there's a difference between, the reason why you see all these different groups that classify themselves as Hispanics working kind of all together was because of how the colonization, the way that they handled things, the management of those colonizers, how those colonizers managed those colonies. Colonization in that region was totally different than how they did it here in the United States. And here in America, it was totally different. It was more oppressive. It was more of a separatist mindset of colonization, that you could never be a part of us, that we dominate everything. Whereas down there, things were ruled a little bit differently down there. And, and so you have, these groups that don't want to, again, it's the Latinidad he talks about, where they don't want to identify themselves. They only identify themselves as Latino. They don't want to admit to the fact that they are of African, they are black, even though they may be fair skinned or may look indigenous. Again, where do you think these indigenous people come from? And so, I was just playing a clip a minute ago before the feed had stopped. Let me switch to the next tab. So this tab is showing you, 200 million years ago. It's showing you how, and I'm going to try to pull it up a little bit more here. It's showing you how, 200 million years ago, that you had, the tectonic plates, the Pangea of the planet. This is in its Pangea form, where the planets, where the tectonic plates were all mushed together, and as the tectonic plates continued to break apart, and as seismic activity, and as the Earth continued to form, and the land masses continued to push apart from each other based on these movements of these tectonic plates, and things that are going on, the activity that's going on underground, the heat that's being generated, the magma and all that stuff that's going on in the crust. You had, the Earth broke apart into all these pieces, and really and truly, when you look at it, where the center of everything was, where you'd had the more fertile ground, would be at most closer to where the equator areas are at. And again, this was fertile ground. This was ground that would have had the most abundance of life in that area, and you could see that a lot of that is Central America, America, what's known as America and Canada, and regions like that. It's known as Africa. And when you understand how all this stuff broke apart. So, when you see that South America was originally attached on to Africa, well, what do you think those people are that were the Mayans and the Aztecs and all the other indigenous people? Who do you think they were? Where do you think they came from? What do you think their origins were? They were of Africa. They were of African. They were of blackness. And we all know the stories of the genetic mutations that have taken place when some folks decided to migrate more upward north, away from the equator, and went up into the Caucasus Mountains. And your body changes, your body evolves. Things happen when you go up into certain regions. After many generations, you don't need a broader nose, because you don't need when you're more closer to the equator, and where there's more sun and more seasons of sun, more days of sun, and it's hotter weather, more tropic, more hotter weather. You got to understand that your nose may be more broader. Your nose is more broader. Why? Because your nose needs to breathe in more air to cool the brain off. It's a natural development. It's a natural evolving of a human species, to change based on the condition. If you're up in the Caucasus Mountains where it's colder, a colder region, well, you don't, and you're breathing in a lot of more cooler air. Well, your nose doesn't need to be as open, as big, and broad as if you were in Africa. So, of course, your nose throughout the many generations will start to narrow up. They'll start to change. If you're in colder weather, that means you're clothed more. The seasons are shorter in reference to sun. You don't get as much sun as in the equator. So again, eventually what happens after many generations is your body doesn't necessarily need to produce as much melanin as if you were closer, where you were in a region where you wore less clothes, you were exposed more to the sun. So of course the melatonin suppresses. You don't need as much melanin in the Caucasus Mountains area. So things start to evolve differently for people up there in the more northern regions. But as Africa continued to stay more closer to the equator, as South America continued to stay more closer to the equator, you could see that those folks still had a darker tone, a darker look to them. And in many cases, when you really look at it, so 1 million years ago, here we go. This is what you have currently. Basically, currently, what you're going to see and on the globe in reference to the planet is concerned. And I'm going to bring up another clip real quick so that y'all could see. But when you really look at some of the pictures and things like that in reference to some of the people, like for instance, like folks who are from what they consider to be like descendants of Mayans and stuff like that. Um, uh, Even the depiction of Mayan people. I'll give you. So here is some artwork. Here is some artwork in reference to the Mayan people. And what do you see on the walls in reference to the artwork? They're dark people. Some of the other things that make sure y'all are seeing that they are dark people. Some of the other things that you see in reference to the Mayan people. Here's a thing of some Mayan people here. What do you notice? Broader noses. Broader noses. You don't see the shallow noses. You see wide noses. Um, get you some more. And even when you look at the artifacts, there are artifacts like statues and stuff like that, pyramids, or some pyramid like structures of the Mayan people. Um, when you look at them, here's more pictures of Mayan people depicted. Depictions of Mayan people. Um, Look at the noses. Look at the nose. Almost looking in some cases Asiatic. In many cases, try to see if I can find a few others for you guys to see. Um, but whether you want to try to deny it or not, you come from that region. When the plates were together. Um, Again, look at the noses. Look at look at the figurines. And they, of course, they want to deny it, like Latino, Hispanic people just rised up out of the ashes. No, that's not the case. That's not historically correct. That when you call yourself Mexican, you are a descendant of many different groups. But that main lineage is African. Even if you look at other groups, like for instance, even if you look at let me see here, I'll pull up another one really quick for you. Even when you look at, find out where it's at here, so I can pull it up. Even when you look at depictions of what we would consider to be Aztec people, um, and they're showing that that these are some of the descendants in these regions. Again, look at the nose. Look at the nose. Look at the color of the skins are darker. Um, Aztec figurine. So you can try to deny it all you want to. You know, Look at the nose on some of the artifacts. You could try to deny it all you want to, but they were darker people. They weren't fair people. They try to make it seem, uh, like they are this separate group, but no, these groups have history, and the history truly comes of an African origin, or at least in the center of civilization, which the center of civilization has been found to be uh, in Africa. The oldest findings that they have right now that tie us all together. And this is a depiction of a warrior. I mean, look at the color, the bronze color of the skin. Look at the more bronze color of the skin. Because again, a lot of uh, South America, Central America is more closer to the equator. So you're going to have some of the same similar dynamics. So, but I just wanted to show you that. And there's so many folks that, again, you know, talk about uh, there, not being this multi-race, society that everyone wants to try to make it seem like. That's not the case. The truth is that there's only one race, the human race. Um, I'm gonna play this so y'all could see this real quick. So this is from Dr. Jane Elliott, and we had her on our program before on Patrick Henderson's Meet the People. So I want to play this for you.
I said, if I were black, they'd have killed me a long time ago. And if I were black and saying the things I say, I wouldn't be alive. Bullshit. No, you're not going to say, I'm sorry there's racism. No, I do not have to ask you nicely. I consider this exercise an injection of the live virus of racism.
The live virus of racism.
I watched my students become what I told them they were. I watched little, wonderful, brown eyed white people become vicious, ugly, nasty, discriminating, domineering people in the space of 15 minutes. I watched brilliant, little, blue eyed white Christian children become timid and frightened and angry and unable to learn in the space of 15 minutes. If you do that with a whole group of people for a lifetime, you change them psychologically. You convince those who are analogous to the brown eyed people that they are superior, that they are perfect, that they have the right to rule. Did you learn anything this morning?
I think I learned from the experience of feeling like I was in a glass cage and I was powerless. I realized this morning that there were very few times in my life that I've ever been discriminated against. Very few.
And you convince those who take the place of the blue eyed students that they are less than.
How did they feel yesterday? Down like a dog on a leash.
If you do that for a lifetime, what do you suppose that does to them? You find out that there are people of color who refuse to live down to our expectations of them. I am now watching, at the national level, that exercise that I did based on eye color being reenacted in the government of the United States of America. I've done this with people of all ages for the last 50 years. Now think about that. Next year it will be the 50th anniversary of the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. and the beginning of the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. When are we going to learn? When are we going to put a stop to this? White people's number one freedom in the United States of America is the freedom to be totally ignorant about those who are other than white. We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. White people are the free, and people of color have to be brave.
Well,
I want this situation to change. I want it to be such that no black person has to have courage to get up in the morning, any more than I, as a white person, have to have courage to get up in the morning. This is the most important book you or I or anybody else will ever read. I'm an educator. Every educator should refuse to perpetuate the myth of white superiority. There's only one race. It's the human race.
man, I got to thank Dr. Jane Elliott. She was on our program too, family. Um, and I just got to thank Dr. Jane Elliott for just pointing that out again. There's only one race, the human race. And let's dig into that and expound on that really quick because I got one for that as well. Um, let me pull that video up here. Um, let's expound on that as well. There is only one. Let's get into that. And let's prove that. Um, hold on a second here. Let me pull this up. Okay, I think that we have it pulled up here. All right, let's go live with it. So, there's only one race, the human race. Y'all could say what y'all want, and tried to separate us by groups. Um, and that's what a lot of white folks try to do, and that's what a lot of Latinos try to do. So Latinos try to do. They African people too. They're black people too. And here's why. Let me expound on it. Hold on a second. I gotta get the audio to play. Give me 1 second here. Get the audio to play for you guys. Okay. All right. Let's see if this works. Nope. See, this is what I was having trouble with yesterday, family. I was having trouble with this, getting this to go. What I may need to do is just to come out and go back in, or let me do this way. Let me just pull it up under another. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull it up under another. But yeah, it's interesting. We had Dr. Jane Elliott on our program before. She was amazing. Um, Let me see. Let's see if this works. Okay, I don't hear.
Platform
There we
built
go.
for agencies.
Okay, let's pull this up. So I want y'all to watch this clip really quick. Now, the oldest, bones they found was they call her mitochondrial Eve. This really kind of talks about the whole mitochondrial Eve thing, and let's let this go.
Humans inherit mitochondrial DNA only from the mother. So, in order to pass on empty DNA from generation to generation, the mother must have an unbroken link of female descendants. Unlike nuclear DNA, which undergoes recombination, much of empty DNA is passed from mother to daughter, relatively unchanged. If we take a sample of empty DNA from a population and try to reconstruct their matrilineal ancestry using the very slow mutation rate of empty DNA, we might arrive at a single female common ancestor, a mother whom we can all relate to from our mother's side. This is exactly what Kahn, Stoneking, and Wilson did in 1987, and found out that, in fact, all humans alive today do have a common female ancestor who probably lived about 200,000 years ago in Africa. They named her Mitochondrial Eve. Analogous to this, tracing Y chromosomal DNA, which is only inherited from father to son, points to our common father, Y chromosomal Adam. However, there is no reason to believe that mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam lived at the same time. Likewise, they were not the only humans living at the time, but their contemporaries failed to produce a direct matrilineal or patrilineal descent. Also, mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam were only the most recent common ancestors. Going back in time, we can even find common ancestors of species all the way back to the first single-celled organisms. What's more, our actual common ancestor following both mother's and father's side probably lived as early as 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. All this shows that we are so closely related, more so than we could ever imagine.
So, and again, they actually found, they did a testing of, I believe it was like the oldest fossils they found. They call her uh, mitochondrial Eve. See if I could find that really quick. Um, there's a whole bunch of videos in reference to the whole mitochondrial Eve. I don't want to play a whole bunch of large.
Because there are so many more ways of.
I don't want to play the larger clips. There's
Mitochondrial.
a small clip here I want to play. It's only a minute long, and I believe it's one of the researchers that was behind the findings of Richard Dawkins, one of the people that were named in that last video.
Mitochondrial Eve is our most recent common ancestor in the female line, because mitochondria only go down the female line. Mitochondrial Eve lived earlier than our most recent common ancestor because there are so many more ways of being an ancestor than just the maternal line. You can be an ancestor by going father, grandmother, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandmother, and so on. There are millions of different ways of being an ancestor. And so obviously, given all possible ways of being an ancestor, our most recent common ancestor has to be a more recent one than mitochondrial Eve, since mitochondrial Eve is the most recent ancestor down only one pathway, this trickle of genes down the right-hand end of the family tree. Similarly, Y chromosome Adam. All males have a Y chromosome, no females do. All males get their Y chromosome from their father, their paternal grandfather, their paternal great-grandfather, and so on. Once again, a trickle from the left-hand end of the family tree. So Y chromosome Adam has to be another one who is earlier than our most recent common ancestor. But Y chromosome Adam, by a totally different line of reasoning, probably lived more recently than mitochondrial Eve. And certainly, Y chromosome Adam never met mitochondrial Eve. The reason I say Y chromosome Adam lived more recently is that there are more ways of having descendants if you're male. You're more likely to have lots of descendants if you're male than if you're female. And the reason for that is that a male is capable of having hundreds of descendants. And one or two males in history have. If you look at the Y chromosome of many peoples in Central Asia, they all derive from a single male who lived around about the time of Genghis Khan. Muley Ishmael the Bloodthirsty had more than 800 children.
Wow. Interesting. So, again, going down the mother line of things, you find that, again, we all share the same mitochondrial DNA, and that DNA is found in everybody currently on the planet. And it turns out that mitochondrial Eve, from what we understand, came from a region in Africa. And let's see, here's another clip of it. This explains a little better. And again, and even a rendering drawing of mitochondrial Eve. So, and the whole purpose of just talking about this and bringing this out is because at the end of the day, when we talk about doing things purposely in our community, and then you have these arguments from other communities that say, well, how does that benefit me? I'm not black. I'm not African. That's going to be the argument.
In human genetics, the mitochondrial Eve is the matrilineal most recent common ancestor of all living humans. In other words, she is defined as the most.
Bring that back.
In human genetics, the mitochondrial Eve is the matrilineal most recent common ancestor of all living humans. In other words, she is defined as the most recent woman from whom all living humans descend in an unbroken line purely through their mothers, and through the mothers of those mothers, back until all lines converge on one woman. In terms of mitochondrial haplogroups, the MTMRCA is situated at the divergence of macro haplogroup L into 0 lira and 1 lira 6. As of 2013, estimates on the age of this split ranged at around 150,000 years ago, consistent with a date later than the speciation of Homo sapiens, but earlier than the recent out of Africa dispersal. The male analog to the mitochondrial Eve is the Y chromosomal atom, the individual from whom all living humans are patrilineally descended. As the identity of both matrilineal and patrilineal MRCAs is dependent on genealogical history, they need not have lived at the same time. As of 2013, estimates for the age YMRCA are subject to substantial uncertainty, with a wide range of times from 180,000 to 580,000 years ago. The name mitochondrial Eve alludes to biblical Eve, which has led to repeated misrepresentations or misconceptions in journalistic accounts on the topic. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you would like to view more of our videos. Have a
So what they were basically trying to say is that, again, even though mitochondrial atom, the Y chromosome, and even mitochondrial Eve, even though they lived in different periods, technically they still come from the same region. So they don't come from Europe. They don't come from the Caucasus Mountains. They all, the oldest lineages of both of those folks, even though they lived at different times. And mitochondrial Eve is the furthest distance, the longest of the relative of us, the descendants of us. Even though they didn't live in the same period, again, they come from the same region. They all come from Africa, and then everybody branched off from there. We're talking about, they said anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. So they can say what they want. They could deny all they want to in reference to their identity is concerned. But at the end of the day, you can't deny who you are through genetics. And again, we are all connected, and like Dr. Jane Elliott says, there is no such thing as races. There's only one race. There's a human race. That's it. And so when we start talking about doing things purposely in our community, and then you have other communities come up and say, well, I'm Jewish, or I'm Greek, or I'm such and such and such. No, well, based on science, research, and information that's out there, the oldest information that's out there, it shows that technically you are of African descent, the descendants, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able and capable of teaching this, even to a school that may have some Latinos, because what we're seeing currently, especially in sanctuary cities or cities that are supposed to be so-called sanctuary cities, we're seeing now a diluting of the school pools. A lot of these schools are starting to have mixed groups in them, and the heavier base of what they call, if they want to call themselves that, Latinos, Latinx groups in them. Matter of fact, I was surprised recently. Yolanda's son Jordan, who goes to Forest Park, that school had a school dance, and during that school dance, they played Mexican music, they played Latin music, and they said that the crowd went crazy because the school now has a large base of Hispanic students in it, and throughout the city, especially you go on the east side, you see a lot of these public schools now have a block of Hispanic, so-called, quote unquote Hispanic children in the school. Now, again, if you push for, in a city that's majority Black students, if you would push for a curriculum that was majority Afrocentric, would that go against the Latino community? Would that, the so-called Latino Hispanic community, would that necessarily be a condemnation against those people? No. In any cases, there's something to learn from it, especially when you start talking about colonization and you start talking about how they truly got there. And in some cases, when you really go into the science of it, which I think is something that we should teach. We should teach the origin that actually brings us all back, because I think in some cases that would help us to be a more homogenous society. If we're teaching our children, regardless to who are all inside the schools, if we're teaching our children things like where the origins, where the DNA, where the mitochondrial DNA, where all this stuff shows that we go back into Africa. And you say, well, then, how did I get to El Salvador? Well, how did I get to Colombia? How did my people become to be in Dominican Republic, in El Salvador and Mexico? And then you start going into the stories of how colonization and how things took place. And then even in some cases talk about some of the great folks that, were involved in some cases the anti-colonization movement, how societies broke off when we're able to break off from their oppressor, but then the societies thrived and those societies grew and those societies became into existence on their own. One of the strongest, societies they talk about that really branched out of the whole colonization movement, they talk about Brazil, and you wonder why there's so many black folks in Brazil or so many folks of dark color in Brazil is because of that colonization. When you look at countries like Colombia, when you look at countries like Cuba, when you look at countries like Dominican Republic, and it's crazy because you have these lines and these separations when really and truly, and it's all through colonization, because at the end of the day, Dominican Republic and Haiti is all one big island, but there's a divide in the middle. And even now they're talking about they're trying to build a canal and they're digging on the Haitian side and trying to build a canal, that actually kind of splits and separates the two parts of the island, by a canal. Like it's absurd when technically we should all be working together, and in many cases it's these, everything from racism, classism, the politics of things. Like, for instance, right now, Haiti is in a turmoil right now. They're in a turmoil because right now, the politicos that are stealing all the resources and are controlling all the political power aren't really trying to help their people to rise up. And these were people that at one time came together, revolted, and were able to expel the French and break their oppression, break their colonization, only to be cursed, with greed, and desire and self-fulfilling and self-grandizing. Like all these things, unfortunately, is a curse to Haiti, when Haiti should, after something like that, throwing off your oppressor, expelling your oppressor and coming together to formulate a new government and to be independent. And it's getting out in the world, that Haiti had this revolt. Haiti was no joke. And Haiti is this, independent country now. And people were afraid of that. And even in the Americas, people learning of those stories and hearing of those stories because they didn't want that to happen here in America. But again, you would think that after that history, you would think after them going through, those type of challenges, that Haiti would be this strong, dominant, country. But no, greed and everything else, came in, and unfortunately, truly Haiti in many ways. So, and you see that true in African countries. You see a lot of that monarchy type of rule. And what's crazy is like, there's even a conversation that I had with someone recently. So, a lot of folks here, there are a lot of folks that try to push for socialism. Now, Republicans are not in favor of necessarily socialism because they think that socialism means that people are dependent on the government. That means they're taking money away from the government. And they don't believe that people should be taken care of, right? And what's crazy is that folks come from Latin America, they look at socialism as also bad as well, only because most of the time they are coming from what is considered to be socialist countries. And when they come from these socialist countries, of course, they see the oppression that's behind socialism, that type of socialism, which is still truly driven by a monarch, by a dictator, technically, that's then divvying out the services, which they call socialism, and they're saying that everybody gets taken care of through socialism. These, and they make it seem like socialism is good in those countries, but they're using it more as an oppressive, controlling mechanism. So of course, when a lot of those folks come from Latin America and they come here, and if you start talking socialism and you start talking about, taking care of the people and making sure that people get the needs that they want, they immediately kind of shun, the whole concept and the whole term of socialism. And Patrick and us have talked about this many times because, one of the socialist types of policies here in America is Social Security. Social Security is a socialism type of mechanism, a socialism type of concept. And, but you tell folks that come from that region of the world in reference to socialism, that to them, that's a taboo. That they came from what they considered to be socialism or socialist country of where they came from, Cuba. Cuba's, although they people label it, especially America has labeled it as a communist society because of people like Fidel Castro and things like that, and the whole tie-in with USSR and things like that with Cuba. Technically, Cuba is really and truly a socialist country, but because of that type of socialism, a lot of people from that region, they come up here, and of course they quick to join into the Republican Party because they think the Democrats, are these people that are socialists, and they remember what socialism is like in their countries, and they don't like socialism. So this is just something to throw out there. But again, we have to be, purposeful in reference to what we want in our communities. We have control over what we want in our communities. And I'm telling you, if you have an opportunity to watch this documentary, again, it's called Culture War, Focus on Black Youth, by Dr. Kemp Shockley. It's well done, and it really talks about, presenting that and pushing and facilitating and showing the successes in reference to an Afrocentric curriculum, and how it will benefit our children in the process. And then we also need to be able to be ready to do battle, because there's going to be folks that are not going to want a fully Afrocentric type of curriculum in the schools, especially if the children that are represented in the schools tends to be a small percentage of other ethnic groups, so-called ethnic groups, in those schools. There's going to be some resistance, but at the end of the day, I truly feel that even those who don't necessarily consider themselves to be African, Afro-Latino, whatever the classifications you want, Black, those that don't identify with that have a lot to benefit from it. So they shouldn't be afraid of it. In many cases, they should be willing to join in on it and partake in it because they have a lot to benefit from it too as well. So, so that's enough of that. I wanted to close things out by talking about the last thing, of course. And again, I hope that you guys do take the opportunity to watch the documentary. If you do, please, do comment in reference to it. And let me know what you thought of that documentary. I think that you will truly enjoy that documentary. So let's move to our last subject that I really wanted to talk about, to just home in and get out on. Yesterday, Brandon had a coming out. Yes, he did. He had a coming out, and already there is some battles. There are some battles that are taking place already to the announcement that took place yesterday. It's funny because hold on. All right. There's already some battles that are coming out in reference to it. Some folks are calling it a cat fight. And so, of course, Brandon Scott came out yesterday. No, he didn't come out the way that y'all thought. Get your heads out of the gutter. He came out in reference to announcing that he is running again for mayor of Baltimore City. I mean, did you really need an announcement for that? I thought we all kind of figured that and kind of know that by now that he was going to do that. But let's go into really quick his announcement that he made yesterday.
We cannot turn back. And that's why I am running for re-election to continue to be the mayor of Baltimore City.
Mayor Brandon Scott officially kicks off his re-election campaign at the Cahill Recreation Center Saturday afternoon.
Baltimore, once again, has a choice to make about whether we will continue on the sustainable path forward or if we will go back to the broken ways and the failed leadership of the past.
Scott spoke about how his administration has made progress on several issues in the city, such as violence.
As I stand before you today, we have a 20% reduction in homicides in the city of Baltimore. A 9% reduction in non-fatal shootings in Baltimore. Not me. We are on the track for the first time in 9 years to be under 300 murders in Baltimore City.
Scott says since he took office, the city has reached record unemployment at 2.4%, the lowest rate for vacant housing in a decade, and strong economic growth.
Fostering opportunities for home ownership and working to bridge the racial wealth gap in Baltimore's middle neighborhoods. Investing $100 million toward addressing blight.
He also talked about his plans for brand new recreation centers and investing in the city's youth.
I know you remember every single night hearing about squeegee, 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 squeegee. When's the last time you heard it? Because those young people are connected. We're putting our arms around them. We're loving them and showing them, solving an issue that has existed for far too long in Baltimore.
He says that has an even deeper meaning to him because he's expecting a son.
I'll be raising my own child right here in Baltimore. And I'll be fighting for my son just as hard as I will for yours, because all of Baltimore's children I will treat like they're my own.
Scott faces competition from Bob Wallace and most notably from former Mayor Sheila Dixon, who was recently endorsed by City Council member Eric Costello.
When these candidates start talking about the past and wanting to take us back there, we have to make sure that we ask ourselves, well, what exactly do they want to take us back to? Maybe they mean we should go back to the days when our political leaders acted as though what is done in the light will not come dark, will not come to the light. When they thought they could violate our trust.
He messed that one up.
Because they thought eventually they wouldn't get caught putting their personal gain ahead of Baltimore's public's trust.
And of course, stay with 11 News throughout the upcoming election cycle, from candidate profiles to new endorsements. It's all there for you in the free TV 11 app. Make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an update.
So I guess he was trying to say what happens in the dark won't come to light, won't come to the light. But he kind of stumbled on that one. I gotta go back to that one real quick. I'm sorry, folks. Don't get mad at me. I didn't stumble on it.
When they thought they could violate our trust, days when our political leaders ourselves, well, what exactly do they want to take us back to? Maybe they mean we should go back to the days when our political leaders acted as though what is done in the light will not come dark, will not come to the light. When they thought they could violate,
he even lost the crowd on that one. They didn't. They didn't even really clap like they were clapping on all the other subjects. He kind of lost them on that particular line right there. So obviously, it's supposed to have been what's done in the dark will not come to light. Obviously, and he kind of stumbled on that and messed that one up. That was a huge foobar, a huge fumble. He dropped the ball on that play. So, but again, the announcement is there. Mayor Brandon Scott makes the announcement coming out. And of course, I keep trying to tell y'all, don't believe in none of these politicians. What's going on currently? If you really think that you are better off 4 years of what's been going on in reference to the current administration, then I have a bridge out in Brooklyn to sell you. But again, and if you remember the promises that he made, he ain't bringing that up. Yeah, we might be heading towards a 20% reduction in reference to homicides right now. And, there are some efforts that were out there especially during this year. That may have helped a little bit, but I keep telling y'all that the violence happens in trends. It goes up and down like the stock market. Right now, we might be in a downward spiral, but in a downward trend. But if you remember, he said, for during my administration each year, I'm going to reduce homicides and by 15. Well, I think violent crime or whatever it was by 15% each year. Well, you failed at the first 3 years, and you may get a success during this year. The year is not over yet, and we still see shootings left and right. And again, the perception, you got to look at the perception. It's not just a matter of whether or not there are less shootings and less homicides than there ever was. You got to look at the perception. And the perception is that most people don't feel safe, you know, 4 years, that actually folks will tell you that they feel less safe now than they did 4 years ago, and that may be just, unfortunately the perception that most folks have that is currently taking place. So, but of course, Mayor Brandon Scott comes out and makes his announcement. And of course, it's already starting to become, so he made the pop shot, which he got it, he didn't hit it out of the park, so unfortunately that was an epic fail. You tried to throw a pop shot, and if you're gonna throw a pop shot, you better get it right the first time. You better make sure that when you shoot the shot that that you hit the mark that you're trying to shoot. And it was just funny that he unfortunately got that one wrong. That is so funny. And I'm sorry to laugh at you, Mayor Scott. It was just funny that unfortunately you missed that mark, and that could have been a home run. That could have been like, ooh, did you hear what he said? Ooh, like, and the crowd would have been, really clapping it up in the process. But instead, but he did identify something that's truly, something that you have to really identify. The fact that you have these endorsements from folks. Again, the endorsement to me. Especially when the election is just starting. And then even just the narrative that people are painting. Like, I'm telling you, like y'all should be suspicious when they say the top candidate. There's no such thing. If it's a fair and free election, there's no such thing as a top candidate. Not yet. Because right now the people should be willing to look at people equally, should be willing to, kind of listen to everything that's going on. Take in everything that's going on, and what's interesting is a couple of days ago, Mayor Scott, basically had took a shot already at Sheila Dixon in reference to the endorsement. So I want to play that clip real quick. We get ready to wrap this up for this afternoon, folks. And again, hey, if you can't handle the truth, you can't handle the truth. I don't know what else more to say. But yeah, that was funny. Because again, like I said, if you're gonna take a shot at somebody, make sure you shoot that shot. You know what I mean? Don't he kind of went for the 3-pointer. He kind of went for the 3-pointer and unfortunately missed the 3-pointer. So it's unfortunate, but maybe he'll have plenty of other opportunities to do so to get it right. He better practice on it. So, all right, let me play this next clip real quick. So, this came from 2 days ago when the endorsement from Eric Costello actually came out. Let's watch that real quick. Running here. I think the sound is routed right. Give me a second here. I'm not sure why it keeps doing that. I might have to hold on 1 second. Let me bring this back up. Yeah, but so somebody was pointing out, they was saying, yeah, it's already starting to be a cat fight already. It's starting to turn out to be a cat fight already. Oh goodness. Um, yeah, I guess it's starting to become a cat fight already. Um, that's what you want to call it. Uh, uh, oh goodness, they calling it a cat fight already. So, all right, let's see if I can get it to pull up. And we get this infomercial stuff out of the way.
Baltimore's race for mayor heating up as Mayor
All right,
Scott
there we
and
go.
former.
All right, so I want y'all to. Oh yeah, it's starting to heat up. All right, so this was like 2 days ago. This actually happened when Brandon first found out, I guess, about the endorsement. This was a response in reference to that.
Baltimore's race for mayor heating up as Mayor Scott and former Mayor Sheila Dixon traded shots today, one day before the mayor officially announces his re-election campaign. Dixon saying the current administration has been a disaster, pointing to dysfunction in city government and what she says is a lack of transparency, while Mayor Scott claims the city is thriving under his leadership and that Dixon represents a return to a failed part of Baltimore's history. Good evening. I'm Vincent Hill. Those comments come just one day after Councilman Eric Costello endorsed Dixon for mayor and at the same time delivered scathing comments on Mayor Scott's time in office. The mayor responded today, calling those comments laughable. Fox 45's Keith Daniels spoke with Dixon after she and the mayor traded words this morning. Keith, what is she saying about the mayor's comments?
Well, the mayor and Dixon had that exchange on the radio, and tonight Dixon is here as the campaign apparently heats up even before the mayor has his official launch of his re-election bid. Former Mayor Sheila Dixon poised and positioned, ready with comebacks after taking jabs from her opponent, Mayor Brandon Scott.
This is the time where this is going to happen. You know, for me, it's about sticking to the issues.
Dixon speaking out after Scott's early morning talk radio interview Friday, the mayor trading barbs about Dixon never using her name while addressing City Councilman Eric Costello's support for her. Costello calling Scott's administration and leadership a failure.
Leadership that's failing the city is almost a laughable comment when my leadership has the city on pace to be under 300 homicides for the first time in 9 years.
Dixon tonight fires back.
First of all, he's taking credit right now for something he hasn't even done. Last 3 years, he made a promise to reduce the crime 15% every year.
Investing in our education, opening rec centers, not closing them like the person he's endorsing did when she was mayor.
Stephanie Brown Blake, who is Brandon's Mayor Scott's mentor, she closed the rec center. So we actually opened rec center.
No. So let's rewind this because I called this out at one of these contrived, and I got to stop this right here because this is BS. And Sheila, it's BS. You know my number. You've texted me. You know where I am. You know how to reach me. You're full of it. So during her administration, it was her Department of Recreation, along with Frederick H. Bielfeld at the time, who actually closed down. They forget the PAL centers, and they actually put those officers back on the streets. Now, everybody was arguing at the time. When you talk about community policing, when you're talking about police officers getting to know the community, and in some cases being embedded in the community, the PAL centers were the perfect example of that. All right, she was she was at the time it was her. Matter of fact, I forget the lady's name. I'm gonna have to pull it back up. At the time, there was a current director of Park and Recreations that left during the time that she came in, and it was a female, black female, that was in her administration. And if folks remember the name, you could throw the name out there, type the name in on whatever platform you're watching this on. I forget her name, and I've talked about it before, and I have brought her name up. I'll try to see if I can pull this up really quick. But it was under Sheila Dixon's watch. See, she doesn't want to necessarily classify the PAL centers as recreation centers, but for most communities, like Brooklyn, didn't have a recreational center. So Brooklyn relied on the PAL program to provide recreation to the community, especially after school programs in the community. And my son was a product of the PAL centers right there in Brooklyn. They did everything from played soccer, played basketball, played football, and the officers knew the officers knew the students by name. She said, no, I'll wait for the holiday. So the officers knew the children by the name. It was the PAL centers that really connected, especially the plainclothes, the uniformed officers. Because I even remember an incident one time to where my son was being harassed by the detectives. And if it wasn't for the fact that one of the uniform officers happened to drive by and heard the call and was actually in the Brooklyn community and came to give an assist, to the officers that were out there, because the crowd was getting a little unruly. Well, the crowd was getting unruly because you were messing with children in the neighborhood, and many of them had nothing to do with anything, especially my son. My son never got involved in selling drugs or anything, but he knew all the young people out there that sold drugs and were associated with drugs. And it was unfortunate because they were his friends. They were his peers, unfortunately, because they all grew up in Brooklyn homes. And even though there were some bad kids there, it's hard for them to separate themselves from their friends and people from their community and people that they trust and people that they kind of congregate and hang out with in the community. So, but a lot of times they would mess with the wrong ones. And even even the bad kids would say, hey, man, you got one of the wrong ones, not identifying that they were one of the ones that were the bad ones. But it's like, hey, I know he ain't involved in nothing. Like, he don't jam off, do nothing. He ain't even about that life. Like, he got families. He got family members that are protecting him, and they would even identify the detectives like Gerzak and Donato and all them would kind of identify to them that, hey, you got the wrong ones there, and Murphy and all them. And so, I remember the time the officer pulled up and the officer said, hey, what y'all got going on here? It said, we're just, checking, blah, 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 we're doing our regular routine. They were part of a drug unit. I believe it was DDU or one of those units at the time. And they were like, and the guy said it. The guy said, hey, well, that one right there, Stokes right there, that's, they knew him as Stokes. And they were like, hey, well, Stokes right there, like, I know him. Stokes, he's a good kid. He's not one of the bad kids. Like, you're kind of really messing with one of the wrong ones. I know for a fact he's not involved in anything because I know his father, I know his mother, I know his grandmother. Like, they are on top of him, and he's up at the PAL Center with us. So, but it was the PAL centers that were closed. And even right around that time too, the dismantling of things like, for instance, like housing police, all that stuff kind of happened within that period. And so she wants to try to deny all she wants to in reference to closing of recreational centers. And there was some recreational centers that were closed at the time. I'm going to get the names of the recreational centers that were closed at the time, whether they were closed in need of repair or closed in reference to budgetary. There were some budgetary issues that they were dealing with at the time. And we were coming up under a recession at the time. I remember I told y'all when she got into office in 2007. Let me pull it up here. So, and again, I keep this stuff down on notes because my old brain, so Martin O'Malley was mayor from 1999 to January 17, 2007. She came in that year in 2007, after O'Malley went off to go off into the governor's office, and Sheila Dixon was in office until February 4th, 2010. That's the day that she resigned. And again, in 2008, if you remember, the market crash. That's when the market crashed. That's when the mortgage meltdown happened. That's when everything, the bubble hit in reference to real estate is concerned. The country was hit, with a recessionary period. There was all kinds of budgetary issues that were going on in the city at the time. And yes, stop lying. You can call me, but stop lying. And because of those budgetary issues, and because you had Frederick H. Bielfeld, matter of fact, I used to call in. This was before I came to work for Radio 1. I used to call in and used to speak about things on Larry Young's show all the time, especially in reference to policing, because I had just formulated the organization Cop Watch. And I remember getting into an argument because Frederick H. Bielfeld was invited as a guest to talk about things in the community, and he allowed himself to take calls from the community. And when he took those calls from the community, I immediately went straight at the jugular with him. You closed the PAL centers, you closed recreation, you helped to close the recreational programs that were through the PAL centers. You claimed that you had to put more officers on the streets and things like that is concerned. And we listened as Frederick, these are his comments, not my comments. He said that recreational programs are superficial and do not reduce crime in any way. That they were superficial, that recreational programs were superficial and did nothing in reference to reducing crime, which was a bunch of nonsense. And at the end of the day, like I said, many of the officers, and especially they were black officers, what's crazy is even after they closed the PAL Center, there was many of the PAL centers that still struggled to stay open under the free time and the dime of many of these officers. Some of these officers had such a love and admiration and so much of a respect for the children in the neighborhood and knew the difference that they were making in reference to these children in the neighborhood, that they still tried to keep the PAL centers open. I'd say almost maybe some of them as long as almost a year on their own dime, their own time, with their own efforts and their own merits, trying to keep these programs open. And I'll never forget it too, because one year, Smoochie James, my son, was on punishment one year, right? Because there's certain things that we didn't tolerate, and in school he had did something that was kind of considered to us to be disrespectful, so he was on punishment for the basically the duration of the summer. And of course, they were in the process of going to the championship. I think it was soccer they were playing at PAL. They were on the road to going to the championship, playing these other leagues. And so they kept talking about going to the ship, and they, mean the championship. And so they really wanted him to play. So I actually had officers like banging at my door, talking about, please, Mr. Jason, please, Miss Keisha, whatever we could do, we'll bring him back. We won't even take him out for pizza after the game. Like, we'll bring him back. He'll go right to the game, or he'll go right to practice, and he'll come back. And I had to kind of give in because, again, I knew what they were doing in reference to, like, he needed them. He needed them as much as they needed him. And again, I owe, because we were two working parents. We were always busy. His mom's, was a manager for a fast food chain, and always into some sort of restaurant management. I was working construction, and many times on the road a lot of times, and sometimes we would stay over in different towns and different cities doing highway construction. So, and it was really the PAL Center that gave him that extra set of guardians, that extra parental guidance that was needed. Because if we would have relied on him to try to figure things out while we were trying to pay bills and trying to live life and make sure that he had the things that he needed by us going out there and working, I don't know what he would have, because he'd have, most likely became a latchkey kid, and, it might have ended up getting out there, might have been involved in some stuff, with the kids out in the community selling drugs, the ones that the parents weren't, that guidance doesn't give them, putting up them guardrails. So, but again, You know, she's telling a story when she talks about that she had nothing to do
Closing them like the person he's endorsing
with
did when she was
closing the
mayor.
rec centers.
Stephanie Brown Blake, who is Brandon's Mayor Scott's mentor, she closed the rec center. So we actually opened rec center. So let's talk about, because I believe in giving factual information.
Dixon and Scott back and forth, coming on the heels of Costello's historic endorsement Thursday.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Not for the incumbent mayor, but for his opponent, Dixon. Costello's endorsement, accompanied by some stinging words aimed at the mayor.
City Hall has reached a level of dysfunction that I never thought was possible, and our residents and our small businesses deserve better.
4 years ago, Costello endorsed Mayor Scott's campaign, but as she's the right choice.
We not only reduced crime during my period of mayor, but we also cleaned up the city. We also picked up recycling. We were in a recession. I did not even have a quarter of the amount of money that the city has today, or the amount of staff that the city has today. And we were able to do probably 10 times more than what's going on now.
Well, the mayor is expected to officially launch his re-election bid tomorrow at the Cahill Recreation Center. We're live tonight. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
All right, Keith.
Yeah, so that. So, of course, you know, the cat fight was beginning 2 days ago before he made the announcement today at the recreational center, which is a brand new recreational center that they just opened up. But I just found it funny because, again, they're taking shots at each other. The cat fight is beginning. And unfortunately, on top of the cat fighting that's going on, hold on here. On top of the cat fighting that's going on, of course, they're taking shots at each other's records. So, but again, I'm with Brandon on that. Like, you know, do we want to go back to the old ways again? You know, she could deny it if she wants to. The gun trace task was under her management. People say it may have started shortly before O'Malley left, but technically it was formulated in 2007. If it was really formulated in 2007, according to what the reports are saying in the book that was written in reference to it, We Run This City, by Justin Fenton. If Justin Fenton are all identified task force formulated in 2007, I don't see how much of this had anything to do with O'Malley, because at the end of the day, O'Malley technically didn't kind of get into O'Malley had left and she picked up, I told you, the beginning of the year in 2007. So again, I think that people are grabbing onto certain facts and are trying to exempt themselves from other facts. Like, for instance, she was responsible for bringing Ceasefire here. Ceasefire is the organization that went on to be Cure Violence International, which is still the same organizers. It's still the same directors. It's still mostly the same board members, and they are the ones that are responsible for Safe Streets, and she likes to say, well, this is not the program that I originally, no. These are the same people. The program had nothing to do with you. The program never had anything to do with you. Again, the program was always wrapped around and surrounded with the notion and the premise of having, what you call violence interruption, violence mediation. That was the main, structure of the program. But again, these are still the same directors, the organizers, the people that actually put the blueprint together, that actually came and managed and actually brought the program, taught the things that were necessary for the program to be able to blossom and to be able to turn into the program that it is currently today. And again, y'all have to understand how nonprofit organizations work. Again, you can get at the finances, but technically, you don't go tell United Way how to run United Way. You give them a task, or you may need United Way to do certain things, like, for instance, manage healthcare for the homeless. You might need the Archdiocese and Catholic Charity. You might need them to manage one other initiative. But you give them the task to do, and then they put the formula together. They actually put the action plans together, and they go out there and they implement it. At the end of the day, they are only technically accountable for those programs to their self. You can't go to YMCA, which is another nonprofit, and tell them what to do. You can't go to Catholic Charities and tell them what to do. They usually will present initiatives, or they usually will present a program. Same thing like with us. You can't come into our nonprofit and tell us how to manage or operate or to run People Empowered by the Struggle. How we run People Empowered by the Struggle is based on our board, and based on our members of our board, and based on our leader, our executive director, Yolanda Pulley, and how she decides that she wants to manage her organization. So, this notion that you can go into Safe Streets and tell them how to operate and expect them to give you things back in reference to accountability. They're going to give you some metrics and some data. And that's what they've done. They said, hey, we've mediated this many fights. We've mediated this many arguments. We may have prevented this many shootings. They're going to give you that type of data. But as far as the day-to-day operations is concerned, and who's on payroll and all that really and truly, they're not obligated to have to do that. It sounds nice. It sounds like something that you would want to get out of the organization. You want to have accountability, but do understand that accountability that accountability technically doesn't have to be presented as much as y'all want to say, oh, well, it should be, Monzi should be, and this and that. That's not how nonprofits work until they change, the structure of how nonprofits work. Again, like I said, you can't come into our organization and say, well, who's doing this? What's doing that? What's your plan on? First of all, we may not want you to know our secret sauce in reference to how we navigate and how we help families. But what we may do is we may tell you, well, we've helped this many families according to our data. And that's what a lot of them are doing. They're telling you, what they're doing in reference to the program is concerned, and they're giving you the metrics in reference to the program, but they don't have to necessarily give you a full breakdown of how the program is actually working. So, but again, it's interesting. And even I want to just play this last clip for y'all, and I'm going to wrap things up for the afternoon. And it's been really fun. I've enjoyed just providing the information, having some fun. Just playing playing pun on some folks in reference to what is going on in our city. I think this election is going to get even more heated up, and I would hope that y'all would try to avoid, the regular grandstanding and soapboxing of these, particular career politicians, and really take a look and a consideration.
Fox 45, pressing Mayor Scott.
And really,
Councilman Zeke Cohen early this month.
We can't continue to have this situation.
And truly look at and really consider another candidate for mayor, someone that is truly about the people, and someone that truly is going to rip apart City Hall as we know it. It's not going to be business as usual. It's going to be going in every nook and cranny of City Hall and looking at transforming. Looking at transforming and looking at really changing the way City Hall works. I'm really
Fox
proud.
45, pressing Mayor Scott.
I'm really proud at what Yolanda Pulley is presenting to the people, what she's putting together for the people. And I hope that when folks really get an opportunity to look at her platform, look at what she's getting ready to do for Baltimore City, in reference to responsible, accountable, and open government is concerned, and really looking at, saving the people money and doing the things that needs to be done to have a responsible government, holding things accountable, In many cases, putting our hands in where it needs to be put in reference to looking to where the money is going, how the money is being spent, how well it's affecting the communities and the people of Baltimore City. I'm hoping that folks will take the opportunity to say, you know what? Hey, I really appreciate what she is trying to bring to the community. And she is the one that we really should consider once you really see her plan and her blueprint. You hear Sheila, a lot of her stuff sounds like the same old regurgitated vomit. It's like when a dog vomits, its food up, and then starts licking its food back up. It's the same, upchucked, dog food, that she's trying to present to the community. And again, she had an opportunity, and it's the same thing I keep saying about all these politicians. When you get into these positions, first of all, the eye is on us because of the simple fact that we are Black people in these spaces. And, in many cases, we're Black Democrats in these spaces, and folks are looking at us, and so we have to have a higher level of ethics. I've been saying this for the longest. We have to have a higher level of ethics. We have to go in there and be responsible to the people, responsible and accountable to ourselves, to make sure that we don't do things that puts ourselves in a position to where we become tainted, where we become stained, where we have ethics issues, to where they can come after us, to where they can take us out of this position. Sheila Dixon was the first Black female mayor and should have been mayor for many years, But instead, she was too wrapped up in special interests. But instead, she was unfortunately, too busy, grandstanding, grandizing, and facilitating her own wealth and her own lifestyle, with the chimichurri and all that, and the fur coats, too busy really facilitating her lifestyle in the process, and wasn't really trying to be about the people. You know what I mean? And then again, when you look at even the way that she is presenting herself and coming out, again, I keep asking folks this. Ask her, what are you apologizing for? I wish somebody would go to one of these town halls and would go up to the microphone and say, I saw your op-ed to where you apologize to the people of Baltimore. What are you apologizing for? And don't be so general or so wide, specific, so wide that it doesn't really narrow in on what you did in reference to your ethics is concerned. What did you apologize for? I mean, when I look at the article, did you apologize for stepping on my toes, when we were doing the waltz or when we were doing the cha-cha-cha? What are you apologizing for? And why is it so hard for you to say what I did was unethical? I apologize. I'm taking full accountability and responsibility for taking the gift cards and spending it on myself and not giving it to the true intent of what those gift cards were supposed to. Those gift cards were supposed to go to needy children, and I apologize. I was dead wrong. That's not what the apology, because again, when you start talking about, and you got to admit to the fact that what you did was against children, even with the apology, it really comes off and rubs off wrong on a lot of people. She say what she want to say. Last thing that I would do is take from anybody's child, any children. So, but let me play this last clip, and then we're going to wrap up and get out of here. And again, I really appreciate y'all having the opportunity. If you did have an opportunity to check this out today, I'm going to play this last clip. Let me bring up the volume. Yep, volume is up. All right, let's play this last clip.
Fox 45 pressing Mayor Scott on why he feels he's responsible for a reduction in homicides and non-fatal shootings.
Why do you take credit for that?
Because we put in the effort, right?
Efforts, he says, like Monzi and Safe Streets.
It's important for Baltimore to note 20% reduction, which is double the national average.
But looking at the data, a significant drop in those crimes happened when U.S. Attorney Eric Barron made this announcement with Mayor Scott in the background.
This Al Capone model of prosecution is designed to take violent people off the streets by any appropriate legal means necessary.
And when City State's Attorney Ivan Bates was sworn into office, a much tougher on crime prosecutor than Marilyn Mosby, who Mayor Scott once shared the stage with.
Now this mayor, Mayor Scott, the commissioner, and I.
Since Barron and Bates took office, homicides are down 20%, and non-fatal shootings 9%.
Some data shows that when Ivan Bates and Eric Barron took office, we began to
I think that's false data.
The mayor doubling down, saying he's the one responsible for a safer Baltimore.
I love them both dearly. Their cases are made by police officers that work for Brandon Scott, the mayor of Baltimore City. We direct. The rest are done by us. All the enforcement is done by us.
Political analyst John Deedy calling those comments political.
The mayor, smart politically, will take credit for this stuff because when you're running for re-election and numbers are going down, you want to hang a star on it.
And pointing to the problems the mayor's claims are based on.
The problem is it gets mitigated by the fact that now you have the feds looking into the Safe Streets location and maybe looking into other things.
Councilman Zeke Cohen early this month.
We can't continue to have.
So, of course, there's some controversy in reference to what he thinks is the numbers are concerned, where the numbers are coming from. I don't know. I'm I'm going to leave this one alone because some of y'all can't handle the truth. And I found it profound that Fox 45 News, sat there and said that they may be looking at some other things as well. I'm wondering what else are they looking at? What other programs and what other organizations that may be under Monzi or may be working for Monzi that they may be looking into too? And what information do they have that they've heard that we as the public haven't heard yet? So I don't know. You may have something break out, when we get deeper, going into January, February, and give the feds a few more months to do some more investigation. You may find some other organizations, being put out there in the process, in reference to federal investigators. So keep your nose clean out there, folks. Do what you're supposed to do in reference to transforming young people's lives and getting folks out of the radar and crosshairs. And that's going to be something coming up as well. These children are in the crosshair of folks in Annapolis, the few conservatives that we have in Annapolis, and some of those Democrats that are scared in some cases, to continue to lean on the fact that we can't go back to the old ways, that we have to keep moving forward in reference to trying to figure this out. If we do go back to the old ways, and if they are allowed to change the course of direction that we're currently in, even though the course may not necessarily be producing the fruit that the public may think, we could end up, back to 1999 and the Violent Criminal Reform Act, the Violent Criminal Act that came out then, that brought you things like 3 strike laws, and in the process ended up locking up, folks for long periods of time. I keep saying, okay, so you grab a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, you lock them up, and you say, okay, tougher sentences. We're going to take them and lock them away for 10 years, or 10 years may not be enough, 15 years. 15 years might not be enough, 20 years. So you're talking about someone that's going to come out most likely in their late 20s or in their late 30s, and that's going to be institutionalized, and you don't have the resources in there now. Folks don't want to really pour the resources in there. They just want to take them and confine them and lock them up. Really and truly, I think in some cases, if we had a technology like the movie Judge Dredd, I'm talking about the one where Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone was in, where you can cryovac, they would want to cryovac us and just keep us cryovacked, as opposed to allowing us to go free. And what's going to happen is, of course, society is going to change, generations are going to change, things are going to change. They're going to become institutionalized. Right now, one of the biggest issues that I'm telling you is the reason why that they're not really filling up baby bookings, even though baby bookings may not be at full capacity. I don't believe that baby bookings is at full capacity, or even in some cases, baby bookings may be not in a full capacity state. And reason why I'm saying that some of this has to do with these children being sent home after being adjudicated, being put on the box. I think in some cases is all part of the fact that the system currently doesn't have enough people that are involved in the juvenile justice system to handle the problem at hand. There's not enough juvenile correctional officers. There's not enough staffing. There's not enough programming. There's not enough insight in reference to putting together programming into taking these children and transforming them as opposed to warehousing them. And that's something that we want to kind of be careful and cautious of, because again, there's difference between taking someone and just warehousing them and then expecting them to come out 20 years, 30 years and be productive. They're going to come out and they're going to be even worse in the process. So we have to be careful of that, because again, if we're not really kind of saying, okay, we're going to take them, we're going to warehouse them, but while we're warehousing them, we're going to make sure that there are programs in place, there are successful programs, successful models in place that helps to rehabilitate them. Because at the end of the day, that I keep telling folks, that is the two sole duties of any type of penal system, any type of correctional system, any type of imprisonment in this country has always supposed to have been formulated around the fact that you have you're paying your restitution, you're paying your debt for your crime, you're doing your time in reference to your crime, but at the same time, there is a corrective mechanism. There's a corrective path that's supposed to be there, that's supposed to help transform these lives, that's supposed to rehabilitate these lives, that is supposed to make sure that when you get the point where it's time for reentry, when it's time for you to assimilate back into the community, that you have the necessary tools to be successful, and that we're not creating a pattern of recidivism to where you're constantly resolving in and out of the industrial prison complex, that you're not getting caught up in that web in the process of recidivism. So we have to make sure that, again, if this is going to be the mechanism, that folks in Annapolis, they're circling the wagons, and we're only talking about, in some cases, young Black children. We're not talking about any other group. We're not talking about Jews, Greeks, Germans, Italians. We're not talking about any other group. Matter of fact, we're getting word that MS-13 is out of control, especially in our schools. I'm telling you, folks, you're hearing this, and you keep hearing me saying this, MS-13 in Baltimore City, because we are so-called this sanctuary city. I'm telling you, one of the things that has come up here as well, being that we are a sanctuary city, unfortunately, is that MS-13 element. And we have law enforcement officers that have told us personally that they are dealing with a real threat in our community, and that real threat is called MS-13. They're not even on the radar. You don't hear Brandon Scott talking about it. You don't hear Monzi talking about it. You don't hear any other candidate talking about it. But you're going to hear Yolanda talking about it, about identifying the fact that we have an issue in our schools, and especially a lot of the bullying incidents and things that are starting to sprout up in the school, that our school police and the school administration are dealing with in our public schools, are directly related to MS-13 members that are here in this city. So y'all can say what y'all want. The wagons are only circling, though, for one group. We're not talking about the other brown people in our community, the so-called Latinx, those that that look at things from a Latina die. They don't identify their Blackness. They don't identify their African roots. They don't identify that they're niggas just like us. They don't want to identify with that. They don't. But at the end of the day, look what communities they're coming into. Look what schools they're coming into. You don't see them. They took over all of Eastern Avenue, all of what used to be Greektown. Most of those Greeks and stuff that lived there, they've moved. And at one time, that neighborhood was transforming into a Black neighborhood. Now that neighborhood is little Central America, little South America, and they're intermingling within the Black communities of that whole Highland town. On the other side, you have McElderly Park and communities like that on the other side. So they're intermingling within our community. You don't see them populating heavily in Roland Park. You don't see them populating heavily in Ashburton. You don't see them populating heavily in Canton and downtown, Harbor East, Harbor West, Federal Hill, Upper Fells Point on the other side of Fells Point, on the other side of Eastern Avenue. But you don't see them building out their communities like that. You see them building their communities out in McElderly Park. You see them building out their communities out in Howard Park. You see them building out their communities over in the Liberty and Garrison community area, like you don't see them again in those other neighborhoods. So y'all can say what y'all want. At the end of the day, they're coming into our communities. They're coming into our neighborhoods. So, and it's interesting that they're coming into our neighborhoods and are not going into their neighborhoods. So y'all can say what y'all want. At the end of the day, it is what it is. And some of y'all, you know what I say, y'all can't handle the truth when it comes to it. But it's the truth. It is what it is. Y'all can say what y'all want. It is what it is. You know. So, but it's been a pleasure. It's been fun for me. Just having some fun with you, dropping some knowledge, dropping some information. Again, comment, share, go out and purchase that documentary, Culture War, focus on Black youth. Again, thank you, Dr. Shockley, for such an amazing documentary. I hope that you don't get mad at me for just watering the mouths of our community and allowing them to see some clips in it. I believe it's 6 parts to it. Again, just a plethora of information in reference to an Afrocentric schooling and what is really truly needed in reference to our children and our community. So family, I love y'all. Be blessed. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday until next week when we do this all again. Don't forget to join us tomorrow, 11:30 to 1. At the Patrick Henderson Meets the People radio show. Yolanda is no longer on the team right now because she is a political candidate running for mayor of Baltimore City, looking to win the hearts, minds, and souls, of the people. And again, regardless to what they say, that this is a 3 contest race. No, there are other candidates there right now. There are 7 candidates registered. You should look into each and every one of them. But I'm telling you that the one that you really should be paying special attention to is Yolanda Pulley. She is truly working hard. She is up late at night. She is building out a blueprint for each and every issue in our community and has done the research in reference to each and every issue in our community, from mental health to dealing with homelessness, economic development, strengthening small businesses, getting rid of the quasi-governmental system that we have, so that we can stop saying, well, it ain't our issue. It's the Baltimore Development Corporation's issue, that's made up of these group of businessmen that really care less about your neighborhoods, that really care less, and in many cases are helping to facilitate that whole gentrification and that whole pushing out, of marginalized and disenfranchised and poor Black people, poor Black and brown people out of the community. So again, family, I'm just hoping that y'all take the opportunity truly as she continues to lay out the blueprint. She doesn't want to give all the secret sauce out there, but she is going to present that she's tackling each one of these issues, and she's going to show that she's tackling each one of these issues. And there's going to be announcements that she's going to make throughout the campaign to show you that she's serious about setting up and positioning herself as the next mayor of Baltimore City. So I hope that y'all take the opportunity to really look at this revolutionary queen that, again, is looking at, if you want to use that terminology, is looking at draining the swamp and holding the system accountable and making government work for the people. Right now, there's so many people that tell us that government is not working for the people. They tell us their experiences. They share their experiences. They share their challenges. Many folks that just want to do simple things like be able to help redevelop a neighborhood, that really want to be a part of the transformative change in this city. And many times they are unable to do so because of the fact that they have to deal with all the obstacles in place that the city continues to put in front of them and does not make Baltimore open for business. In many cases, it makes Baltimore, this hoops and hurdles and rings of fire that many of these folks have to go through in reference to trying to just bring transformation, opportunity, job developments. We have organizations that have been trying to get into the schools that have successful youth programs, and the school system refuses to allow them in. Why is that? We got to change that notion. And we have folks that are ready to roll up their sleeves and in many cases aren't asking a dime from the system in reference to going in and taking care of our children and our schools, we should be opening up the door to these types of organizations. There shouldn't be, no resentment, no pushback, no nothing in reference to allowing these folks to come into our schools and make that transformative change. But what it is they don't want to be undermined. North Avenue doesn't want to be undermined. Dr. Santelises doesn't want somebody else coming in and doing it better than what she can and showing her out, when she shouldn't be afraid of that. She should be willing to say, you know what, you come in, if you show me out, you show me out, and if we could take what you're doing and utilize it in the blueprint of schooling in this city, if we can take it and use it as part of the curriculum, then so be it. But to constantly push people away that are trying to help most of the most troubled students that are in these school systems, again, is suspicious to many of us. We're asking, why is that? Why aren't you opening up the doors? Why aren't you letting these organizations? And in some cases, why are you only allowing certain organizations? Because again, we're finding out that certain organizations have the opportunity to go into the school systems and make the engagement, touch the children, get involved with the children, get engaged with the children. And we're finding out that other organizations are being pushed out and being pushed away. That shouldn't be the case. I don't care how many organizations, unless it's an organization from Catholic Charities in the Archdiocese in reference to those pedophilia priests. That's the only time that we should really question, or again, you could easily set up a system and do background checks. And if there's, somebody that's questionable, of course you eliminate them and keep them out. But many of these folks that we have spoken to in the grassroots community and the frontline community, that constantly talk about trying to engage youth in the schools that are being turned away from the school systems, don't have a record like that. They have a record of transforming young people's lives and moving them in a whole different direction to success. So, and we shouldn't be pushing organizations like that away. But these are the things that, again, Yolanda's going in there first 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, 3 months, 6 months. She's going in there already with the blueprint laid out, because at the end of the day, one, we have term limits, and two, she only really has 4 years to really show the people how government can be changed so that it works for the people, bringing in best practices, utilizing new utilities and new ideas, bringing in technology to help us, and in many cases developing jobs around these technologies, doing things that could help the city to be more cleaner, to be more leaner in reference to its fiscal budget is concerned, especially when we're dealing with inflationary times, and we still have an obligation in reference to Kerwin is coming up, and we're going to have to pay into Kerwin. And again, if we're spending more money and still getting the same results, and putting more money in from the taxpayer because of Kerwin, again, we have to make sure that any additional spending that comes in, including the current money that's already being brought in, is accountable, is audited, and we know the flow of that money and how that money gets down to the children and how it's actually helping to uplift the children in the process. If we can't see that clearly, if we can't identify that clearly, if we can't work through that clearly and be able to truly see the fruits of that money going in, especially, like I said, a system, we said this before, a system that has the largest schools funding spending in the nation, one of the top 5, maybe top 6 in the nation, that has the most spending in reference to per student is concerned, beating out, or close to cities like Los Angeles and cities like New York City and Chicago. If we're spending that much money, then we should be getting more back in return in reference to children's success is concerned. High school graduation rates and attendance rates and things like that should be there, but we're not really truly. You could tell that by what's happening with the schools. You could tell that by how the youth are running the streets, that they're not engaging them. There's nothing of them that connects with them inside the school system. And that's because, again, when you really look at it, Dr. Santelises, and I don't care what nobody says, she comes from a private school system, and you know how these private school systems are, and you know how they act sometimes. And a lot of times with these private school systems, there are more, more people that have the money and the ability to send their children to these private school systems tend to be more uppity, tend to be more white, tend to be, all of these particular things that truly gives you a disconnect. You're not educating and teaching to the folks that truly represent what you're trying to teach. You're not talking to them. You're not educating to them. You're not reaching them, because you have this disconnect, unfortunately, because of the system that you came from. It's just like the conversation we had earlier in reference to the white teachers. When you have these white educators, especially white women, that have been brought up, in many cases they haven't, their parents ain't gonna allow them to bring no black man into the household. They've been protected all their life in reference to white supremacy, white superiority, in reference to white privilege. So what do you think they are going to protect and uphold when they get into the school system? So, we got to look at these things and say, oh, well, we got to do things purposely in reference to the betterment of our community. And we have control of it. Your vote and you being involved in the process, that, and you'll see this in the documentary. This is why it's so important to watch this documentary. One of the things that they talk about in the documentary is they talk about the fact that they talk about how your educational system is ran. And they pointed out in there, contrary to belief, a lot of people believe that the school system, the blueprint comes from the federal government. No, there's some guidelines that come from the federal government, but the actual instructional plan, the actual learning plan, the actual course of education is decided at a local level. It starts at the state, and the state gives you a blueprint, but then the city can modify it at the local level with the school board, and the school board is the one that actually decides what books to buy, what curriculum to follow, what programs to educate teachers and keep teachers educated. So it's at that local level. So, and the problem is because a lot of times in Baltimore City, our school board is appointed. The majority of them are appointed. We really don't have a say. That's why one of the things, again, that Yolanda Pulley is doing is looking at transforming the current school system and making it a fully elected body and making them accountable to the people, not to the mayor, to the people. If there's something not going on that's to a dislike of the people, and the people want to do certain things in reference to curriculum, books are concerned, critical race theory and Afrocentric teaching, whatever it is that they want to do, if they feel that that board is not moving in favor of what the community wants, the community has control, and not the mayor upholding the board and not the board upholding the CEO. It can't be like that. We have to have every other district, 24 other districts in the state of Maryland, 24 other districts have full control over the school board. We're the only district, the last district, PG County just got theirs just shortly before Governor Hogan left office. They got their fully elected school board passed through, and we're going to be pushing our legislators this Annapolis, this legislative season. We're going to be pushing our legislators this legislative season to make sure that Baltimore City becomes the last one to get their fully elected school board. So I hope that y'all lobby and call up and make those phone calls when we start pushing for these bills in Annapolis. I hope that y'all start calling these representatives and start pushing them to get these bills pushed forward, to put together the language in reference to a fully elected school board. Baltimore City deserves it. Our children deserve it. So that's really it, family. I hope it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. Just dropping a whole bunch of information, having some fun in reference to what's going on in this political season. Again, if you're not registered to vote, I'm asking you, please get ready, get registered to vote. We're going to need your vote to transform and change our city. We can do this. We stop believing in Brandon. Stop believing in Sheila. Get you up with this revolutionary queen. And we can prevent the things that need to be prevented. We can stop all that nonsense that's going on downtown and all that special interest and all that money that's going downtown. We can start bringing the money uptown because the people have spoken, because the people have made that decision. And if you don't make that decision, by going out there and flexing your right to vote, making sure that you're registered and prepared to vote, then what we get is what we got. What we get is what we got because of because of our inactions. So, and if you need help, again, don't be ashamed. If you can't read, you can't write, whatever have you, call us up. People Empowered by the Struggle, 443-355-8014, 443-355-8014. Call us up, get us involved. We'll come out. We'll even help you to be able to fill out your form. If you have issues in reference to filling out your form, we'll help you. We'll help you fill out your form. So don't be ashamed. We don't care. You can't. We know the educational system has failed many of our people inside our community. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of that. We will come to you and help you to be able to make sure that you get your registration form filled out in reference to this election cycle. So, but I love y'all, family. Y'all be blessed. Enjoy the rest of your week. Hopefully you get a great start to your week. If you want to tune in this afternoon at 3:30 on Spirit 1400, you can go to myspiritbaltimore.com and listen to it. You could go to TuneIn, go to Spirit 1400 and tune in. Patrick Henderson's Beat the People radio show. I don't know if Patrick is going to be around this Sunday. I'm getting ready to give him a call in a few minutes, and I'll find out whether or not Patrick is going to be on for today. I'm just going to call and check up on him, make sure he's all right. And at the end of the day, as I always say, go out there and do something special for someone other than your own selfish self. So I love y'all, Baltimore. I love y'all around the country. I love you around the globe. Let's get ready. Let's get ready to do this fight, this election season. You can see already the cat fight is already starting already with Sheila and Brandon. So it's going to be interesting. So, and we ain't going to get engaged in that stuff. You know what I mean? I might talk the talk and talk the dirt about both of them. But Yolanda's main focus is putting together the blueprint for Baltimore City. She cares less about that soapboxing and that political grandstanding. She's the peopletician. She is your true choice for Baltimore if you want to see change in Baltimore City. So love y'all, family. Be blessed. I will see y'all next time. Please share. And again, if you want to donate, and I appreciate all the donations and stuff that have been coming out in reference to my Cash App. I appreciate y'all. Even if it's just for me to go out and get a cup of coffee, I appreciate y'all. $ Urban City News, or on PayPal at Urban City News. Again, everything is much appreciated. I love y'all. Till next time, be blessed. Peace.